Welcome to all of you for the Raspberry Pi workshop. This is going to be an fourth video of this series. So, I am Ashish.
I am Suresh. As we have seen in our previous video, how to connect a Raspberry Pi to the screen with a mouse and keyboard. So this setup requires a screen, mouse and also keyboard. If anyone does not have a screen with them, then what to do? So there comes a VNC Viewer. It is one of the method to connect your Raspberry Pi to your laptop or desktop virtually without separate screen. So actually there are different methods, but this is the simplest one. So actually VNC Viewer is a virtual network computing is a graphical desktop sharing system that uses remote frame buffer protocol to remotely control another computer. It transmits the keyboard and mouse events from one computer to another, relaying the graphical screen updates back in one other direction over a network. So simply, VNC Viewer shares a screen of another computer onto your computer, providing a keyboard and mouse without any physical connection. But how VNC Viewer get to know about your another device that you want to connect virtually? So there is one concept called as IP addressing. That is actually internal protocol, which is different for different devices in the same network. So by using the IP addressing method, VNC Viewer can be able to connect to other device. So there is another concept required to connect your Raspberry Pi virtually using VNC Viewer, and that is SSH. That means secure shell. Secure shell is a cryptographic network protocol for operating network services securely over unsecured network. SSH provides a secure channel over unsecured network by using client-server architecture, connecting an SSH client application with SSH server. SSH is typically used to log into a remote machine and execute the commands. So now we get to know about VNC Viewer to connect Raspberry Pi virtually. To do so, it is required to turn on SSH and VNC option from your Raspberry Pi. But as we are booting it for first time, by default it is in an off state. And to do so, we require some software that is called as a Putty. If you have a Linux operating system onto your computer, then you can directly connect your Raspberry Pi by using a terminal of operating of your PC, because Raspberry Pi operating system is also a Linux based. So what is actual Putty? Putty is a free open source terminal emulator and network file transfer application. Putty has no official meaning. It supports several protocols including SCP, SSH, Telnet, RLogin, and RSocket connection. It was originally written for a Microsoft Windows, because we all know that in our PC there is a common operating system that is a Windows, but it has been ported to other various operating systems also. Putty is currently a beta software licensed under MIT. So let's just look at this slide. Consider one scenario: the upper side computer having a VNC viewer in it. Relate this computer to our laptop, and the computer on the lower side, named as a PC running VNC server, can relate to our Raspberry Pi, and both are connected in the same network. That in our case, that is a Wi-Fi. Up till now, we have seen a theoretical part of a required software. Now, let's just see step by step how to implement all these things practically. So the first step is to create one folder named as a SSH with no extension onto your memory card, where we have one our operating system of a Raspberry Pi. Again, we want our Raspberry Pi and a laptop or a desktop connect to the same network, and that is a Wi-Fi network. Maybe you have Ethernet with you, and if you have Ethernet, then you don't require to follow this step. To connect a Raspberry Pi to our Wi-Fi automatically at the time of starting of a Raspberry Pi, you will require to create another folder named as a WPA_supplicant, which is have extension of a conf, that is CONF, which is actually a configuration file. And you have to write some code in it that we will see later. So you are done with it now. Your work is to set up some configuration of Raspberry Pi using Putty and connect Raspberry Pi virtually with a VNC Viewer. So we have seen a theoretical part to download a VNC Viewer, how to download a Putty, how to set up a Raspberry Pi using Putty, how to turn on SSH using Putty. So we will see these things are practical. So just look for it.
So guys, till now you have seen a lot of things theoretically actually. That's the VNC viewer, a putty, SSH, IP addressing and many things. So let's just see how to do all these things practically to connect your Raspberry Pi virtually to your laptop or a desktop. So first step is you have to connect your memory card or a pen drive where you have burnt your operating system into your laptop. So I have connected it. So that's all files in the operating system. So the first thing you have to do is create one file. The name of file is SSH and with no extension to it. And to do so, you will require to open your notepad first. Just don't write anything in notepad, just save that file. And select your memory card. Then change the save as type as all files because we don't want text file. We want a file with no extension to it, and to do so you have to give a double quote, write SSH in small letters and complete the double quote so that it will create SSH file with no extension to it, and just save it. Okay, so that's the actually SSH file which we have created. And the another thing is WPS supplicant file. If you have Ethernet with you, then you will don't require this step. But if you don't have Ethernet and you are booting the Raspberry Pi for the first time, and again you want to connect your Wi-Fi to your Raspberry Pi automatically, you will require to create this folder. So to create this file, we will require to open Notepad again. Just open it and write some code. I will give you this code in description. Just see it and copy paste into your folder. You have to change a couple of things here. Just change a country code, that's the IN, because we are in India, so the country code should be IN, and the SSID of your Wi-Fi network, that is Redmi in my case, because I have connected my Redmi phone hotspot to my laptop and Raspberry Pi also, and give a password of it. So that's my SSID name Redmi and the password, and you have to just save this file. Just change save type as all files, and the name is WPA underscore supplicant .conf. So we have created it. Let's just see. So that's the actually file. See the type of file, that's the conf file, that is a configuration file actually. So you are done with it. Now your task is to remove this memory card or pen drive and connect it to your Raspberry Pi and power on your Raspberry Pi also. Again you will require to download some more softwares. That's the VNC downloader. Firstly VNC viewer. So just type VNC download into your Google Chrome and just go with the www.realvnc.com site. That's the official site of VNC to download it. And look at this site, there are many versions of your VNC viewer, many packages just for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, again our Raspberry Pi. So I have a Windows in my PC, so I will just click on a download VNC server so that it will automatically download for you, and you have to just install that setup file. If you have Mac, Linux, then you can go for that also. After downloading VNC, you will require one more software, and the software name is Putty actually. So just type Putty download and hit enter. You will get a lot of links here, but you have to go for a www.putty.org link. Just click on it and just click on you can download Putty here. Just click on here. So you will get a couple of packages here, that's the 32-bit and a 64-bit according to your processor. Just select 64-bit if you have a 64-bit processor. Just click on that link, it will automatically download it for you. So now we have downloaded the VNC viewer and a Putty software, and we will create some folders in our operating system of Raspberry Pi, and we are powered on our Raspberry Pi. So now the next step is look for your Wi-Fi, if it is connected to your Raspberry Pi or not. If the Wi-Fi is connected to the Raspberry Pi, then you have successfully done all these steps, and if it is not, then you have to just follow the steps again from start of video. So if it is connected to your Wi-Fi, just open your putty. Okay, that's the putty window. Here it will asking for a host name or a IP address, but actually we don't know the IP address of a Raspberry Pi, but we know host name. The default host name of our Raspberry Pi is a Raspberry Pi itself. So just write Raspberry Pi and make sure the connection type is on SSH or not, because we are connecting a Raspberry Pi using SSH. Just open it. Okay, so we are successfully logged in into our Raspberry Pi, and that's actually the terminal of a Raspberry Pi. So it will asking for a login ID, and default ID login ID of a Raspberry Pi is a pi. Just hit enter. The default password is a Raspberry. Just type Raspberry, the password, and the login as a pi. Just hit enter. So you are done with it. You are now successfully logged into the Raspberry Pi. So now it is an terminal of your Raspberry Pi. So you will require to do some couple of things here. Firstly, we have to check for IP address of our Raspberry Pi so that we can connect it using a VNC viewer. So to get IP address, the command is ifconfig. Just write the ifconfig and just hit enter. Just see for your IP address of Raspberry Pi. In my case, it is 192.168.43.183. Just copy this IP address so that we can use it later on. And now you will require to go in a setting of Raspberry Pi. And to open the setting of Raspberry Pi, the command is sudo raspi config. So the command is sudo raspi config. Just hit enter. So now you are in a setting of your Raspberry Pi. So you will require to again do some couple of changes here. Just go in a interfacing option, hit enter. There are many options here actually, but we will require to enable our VNC viewer. Just go on VNC, just hit enter, and it will asking for would you like to the VNC server to be enabled. Click on yes. So VNC server is successfully enabled now. Now the next step is go in advanced options, just hit enter, go to the resolution and set the resolution whatever you want according to your screen. I am setting 1920 and multiply by 1080. Just hit enter. It will asking for resolution is set to some mode. Yes, okay. Now we are done with it. Now just click on finish actually. But as you are doing it for first time, actually by clicking finish, it will asking to restart your Raspberry Pi. Just click on yes so that it will restart again and you are successfully done all these steps. So we are done with it now. So now you will require to open your VNC after restarting of your Raspberry Pi. In my case, I have done it previously, so it will not asking me to restart your Raspberry Pi. So now that's the VNC viewer screen. It will asking for the enter VNC server address or a search. So you will require to type the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. I have typed it, just see it, but again I will type it for you. So that's the 192.168.43.183 and just hit enter. Okay, so we are successfully logged in. The username of our Raspberry Pi is a Pi defaultly and password is default password. That is a Raspberry. So the password is Raspberry and username is Pi. Just hit enter. Okay, so we are successfully open our Raspberry Pi window virtually in our laptop. It is giving a warning because SSH is open now. Yes, click on yes. Just go to next, select your country and all these things. We had done these steps previously, so just follow that guide and you are now successfully enter into a virtual view of your Raspberry Pi. So this is it for guys for today. So we are seeing a lot of things in our series in ahead. So thank you guys for seeing this video.